I never went to college, and that probably surprised a lot of my teachers considering they helped me get scholarships for a full ride. I got rejected from art college, and it was devastating, but probably not for the reason you think. You might be wondering why I got rejected from art college, considering I'm a fabulous artist. And it's a really simple reason, and it really has nothing to do with me or my talents. So my art teacher was a fabulous art teacher. I loved her. I loved having art class with her, painting, drawing, whatever. I loved my art teacher. I loved my art class. And my art teacher loved me too. And she was a great teacher. She wanted the best for us. And so she took me and two other girls to the local art college in the state. It was about 45 minutes away. She got permission from all of our parents to take us for a tour to this art school, and it was fabulous. So she took me and these two other girls. We all got in her little Prius, which at the time the Prius was like the new big thing, and it was kind of like interesting and cool to be in this like hybrid electric car. And she took us to McDonald's, so we got to have food, and it was a really fun day. And then we got to the college, which I said was about 45 minutes away, and I loved this college. It was gorgeous inside. It was a really small college in the middle of a city, but it was really cool inside. And it was a specialty college. It was an art college, obviously. They're gonna have a limited number of students that are gonna come every year, so it wasn't a big college. And, you know, we got to meet some of the students that were there. We got to meet, we got to go into different rooms. I loved the sewing room. They had 6 industrial sewing machines, and I was there with my hand sewn on buttons onto my jeans, all denim look, and they loved me, and they were like, you would totally fit in here. And then we went down to the color theory class, and they were like, you would totally pass that. My art teacher was like, you would ace this class, you wouldn't even have to take it. And I was just like, this is so awesome, I'd be so good here. And the college students were cool. My glasses are fogging up. We were just these little freshmen that were coming to look at, or freshmen, we were high school seniors coming to look at this college, and they were excited for us to be there. Of course, they wanted us to come. They were like, this is such a great college, we love being here. There's this one guy who had graduated. He had a job with Nike or something, and he had come back to talk to people about how, do a course at the school, and he talked to us about it. He's like, oh, they're gonna help you get a job outside of college, you're gonna be something in the creative field, it's gonna be awesome. And we were loving it. The three of us, we'd been in art class together for a few years, and so we were just all excited to go. We really wanted to go. And the essential reason why our art teacher took us there is because they had it was a 3-year program, but they had, I think it was $80,000 for the whole program, and they didn't have enough people who signed up for their $30,000 scholarship for the first year. And so my art teacher, they had gotten in contact with my art teacher and said, hey, do you have any students that would want to come if we offered them into this program? We don't have enough students who even applied to it. Can you get some students to come here and apply for this scholarship so we can give away a free tuition, essentially? And so my art teacher was like, yeah, totally. I have 3 girls I could bring by this week. Let's do it. And so we went up, and we met with this recruiter who was in charge of getting people into the scholarship program and all that. And he looked at all of our portfolios, and we literally scrounged our portfolios together within 2 or 3 days with stuff that we had made. So I had really crappy photographs that I had printed out from Kinko's or whatever, because Kinko's was still around. And I had these like really crappy photographs of portraits in my portfolio. And so this recruiter is like looking through my portfolio and he's totally not impressed. And then my art teacher, she touches his arm and she goes, "She drew that with a pencil." And he goes, "Oh, I thought that was a really bad picture. Oh, I didn't realize that's just a bad picture of a drawing." And so he was very impressed with my portfolio. And like after he looked at all that, like his attitude towards me was like, "I want this girl. I want her in my art program. She's a phenomenal artist. Let's get her." And so we all went into, after, you know, touring, we went into his office to do like applications and stuff. Hey, sweetie. And so it was essentially, there was a $50 application fee. And I didn't have $50 on me. My art teacher can't just give me the $50 to apply, even though she would have loved to, because it totally wouldn't be fair to the other kids. So they made me call my dad to try and get the $50 application fee so I could put in and apply for this $30,000 scholarship so I could go to the college. And there was a pretty good chance I would have got that since the recruiter really was impressed with my portfolio. But my dad's an asshole. So my dad argued with this recruiter for probably a half hour on the phone in front of these two other kids that I went to school with, who, like, everybody knew I had a bad family relationship. They knew I didn't like my dad. They all knew there was something weird with my mother, who had harassed one of the ladies in the office so bad she quit. Like, people knew I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. So when they were like sitting there, and these two girls were like the really, really sweet goody two-shoes kind of girls, and like listening to my dad was, I could tell, very uncomfortable for them. And if I were more of an embarrassed, shameful person, I would have been mortified. At the time, I was just angry, because anger is my like primary emotion, especially at the time. So I was just angry, but like I still feel bad for those two girls having to like sit through and listen to this argument that my dad had with the recruiter. And this recruiter was good at his job, which means he was very pushy, very scammy, and was like, "Oh, well, I'm still paying off my student loans," and he's some like 50-year-old man who probably should have paid off his student loans years before, but he probably couldn't get a decent job with an art degree, and so he probably couldn't pay them off. But so my dad was arguing with him. And ultimately, this guy was able to get my dad to, over the phone, give a credit card number so he could pay a $50 application fee so I could apply to the college, and so that I could put in for the scholarship. And it was great. We all went home. We were, you know, having a good time in the car on the way home. We were all happy. And then like 2 weeks later, I got a rejection mail. I got a rejection letter in the mail. And I already knew I was rejected, because after we left, my father went and called the school and had that $50 application refunded. And I told my art teacher about it, and she's like, "That's really crappy, Christine, and you're probably gonna get a rejection letter in the mail from that." And she's like, "It has nothing to do with your artistic ability. It has nothing to do with whether they wanted you or not." She's like, this is not you." And like still getting that letter was kind of devastating, because it's like, I would have loved to go to the art college. I would have loved that. I would have had so much fun there. I would have been a good student. I would have, you know, I would have gotten that scholarship. Like, maybe I wouldn't have gotten that one specifically, but I feel like I would have had a good chance of even getting that scholarship. And so I might have even had my first my first year paid for, and I might have even been able to get another scholarship after that, or maybe I could have got a job and saved up money to pay for the rest of it. And like, I would have done that. Like, I would have been a hard worker. I would have done everything I could to get more and more and more scholarships so I could have gotten. But ultimately I got rejected. I couldn't even try that because my dad was such an asshole that he refunded the $50 application fee, and I could not go to art college. I got rejected from art college. My teachers helped me get 2 scholarships to college for a full ride, and I squandered both of them. The 2 scholarships my teachers helped me get were a full tuition scholarship to the local community college and a part of $1,000 scholarship for art supplies that was split between me and this other kid. And Thomas, I hope you got the full thing because I didn't use my share. So the reason why I didn't go to that college is a bit more convoluted than the reason why I didn't go to the art college. But it was also mostly my dad's fault, but also partially not, because I could have gone to that college if I chose to stay in the state. So when I was in high school, I went to a really poor high school. We had terrible graduation rates. We had terrible GPAs in that school because that school had amnesty for illegal immigrants, and a lot of them didn't speak English, and so a lot of them didn't pass state tests. And so the community college wanted students to come to it, but it had a hard time getting students to go there because a lot of the kids in the area who were graduating high school or who had dropped out of high school couldn't get into the community college. So they had this program. So if you graduated from one of the 4 high schools in the area with a certain level of GPA, I think it might have been 3.75, you would get free tuition for a 2-year associate's degree. And now I had a really rough year my freshman year of high school. I was still living with my schizo mom and I couldn't sleep and my grades suffered. I got a bunch of C's and I might have even got a D my freshman year. But by the time I graduated, after I lived with my dad, by the time I graduated from the other school, I had a GPA of 3.87. I graduated with an honors diploma and I qualified for this free 2-year scholarship to the local community college. And I did not have a pleasant experience with the testing. So in order to actually get into the college, you still have to take the exams and you still have to get accepted. So I did all the paperwork to apply, and that was all free, that was fine. So I went to go take these tests, and my dad dropped me off at the my dad, it was actually probably my sister. I don't think he had his license back yet then. I think he was still on DUI license revocation. My sister dropped me off at the college campus. It's the one she had went to but dropped out of. All 3 of my siblings dropped out of college. I'm the only one who didn't because I'm the only one who didn't go. But my sister dropped me off because my dad still had his license suspended from his DUI. She dropped me off there and I had to figure out my way to the testing room to go take tests. And I failed. I actually did not pass the English test, and I was really confused as to why I didn't pass it because I was a great English student. I was one of the few students who got an A in the AP English class my junior year of high school that they got rid of my senior year of high school because it was too hard for people. Because they didn't know English, and they put people who didn't know English in the class. I don't understand why they did that, but they were setting people up to fail, and nothing against the kids in that class, they just were put in the wrong one. And so I was like, why did I fail this test? Why didn't I pass it? And I talked to my Spanish teacher about it, and she was like, you should go retake that test. I don't think you should fail that. She's like, you're a great student, you're great at English, you're great at Spanish, you should go retake that test. I talked to my art teacher about it. She said the same thing. I didn't talk to my English teacher about it because he was kind of aloof, whatever. I didn't have as good of a relationship with him, but I'm sure he would have told me to go retake the test too, because there's no reason I should have failed it. And I think ultimately the reason why I failed it is I have such a high vocabulary and I have such an understanding of grammar that I thought the test was asking trick questions, but it really wasn't. And I think I overthought the answers and it was like a bunch of true or false. And I think I just answered false because I thought they were trick questions and they really weren't. The answer was just true. And so I went and retook this test, and I was supposed to pay to retake these tests, but I don't think whoever was in charge of it knew that I had failed the first one, so I didn't have to pay for the second test, which was good. And so I went and retook the test, passed with flying colors, no problem there. But there was just something about, like, when I had gone to that campus, I didn't know where to go. I felt very out of place on this campus. The students who were there struck me as very childish, entitled, immature, and they probably still are now. But I just did not have a good experience going to the campus. I didn't really feel good there, but I was still gonna go, right? I still applied, I still got in, I got accepted, I got my honors diploma when I graduated, I qualified for the program, and the other scholarship I got was $1,000 split between me and this other kid. So there's this family, I don't know if they went to the school, they might have gone to the school when they were younger, but they would give $1,000 every single year to a student graduating from the school so they could buy art supplies if they went to college. And so there was this other kid, Thomas, who was a nice artist. I didn't love everything he did, but I could tell he had talent and I could tell he tried. I was a better artist than him. No, I'm not gonna be humble about that. But I think he deserved it. I'm not gonna say he didn't deserve it. I think he deserved it. And they ended up splitting the scholarship between the two of us. So I hope he got the full scholarship because I didn't take my half. And I think he's deserving of that. I hope it was good for him. So that was something my art teacher did. So she helped me get that scholarship. So I had 2 scholarships to go to college. I had free tuition for 2 years, and I think it was like $500 in scholarships to get art supplies to go to college. And I did not take it. That is the one experience with college that I chose not to do. And from a financial perspective, that might be stupid. Like, it might have been good if I had gone and just got my 2-year degree with even just an art degree. Like, if you have a degree of any kind, you can go be a manager in any retail setting, anywhere. Like, it probably would have benefited me. The reason why I did not take it is I could not stand living with my father. He was awful. And I knew he would not let me go to college for an art degree. Even if he let me go, he would have sabotaged all of my artwork if I brought it home. And I know this for a fact because he did that with a painting I was working on in high school. So when I was in high school, I spent over 200 hours on a painting. And my art teacher had me calculate this out because I spent so much time in her classroom. Because I had 3 release periods my senior year of high school. I spent all 3 of those in the art classroom painting this painting. Plus my painting class, and after school I would stay till 3 o'clock, 3:30 every day with her because she would stay for whatever students wanted to paint. And I spent a lot of time on this painting, and I love this painting, and it came out very well. And I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, but I brought it home for, I think it was winter break. I brought home my painting so I could work on it during the break while I wasn't at school. And my father tried to rip my painting up. The only reason he was not able to rip my painting up is I taped that shit down real good. And his arthritic fingers could not rip it off the, like, piece of cardboard or board or whatever I had it taped to. It was a board. He could not rip it off the board that it was on. And so I took my painting, I ran upstairs with it, broke my phone because I wanted to save my painting more than my phone and priorities, and like hid it from him. I didn't let him near this painting, and I couldn't work on it the entire break because he was awful. And I do believe he was jealous. So he's a narcissistic, he's drunk. He was jealous of the talent that I had with art because he thought he was a great artist, and he was a good artist, but I was better than him. And everybody in my family is artistic. There's a lot of talent here and there, but I was the best artist when it comes to painting and drawing. Like, for sure, I was better than everybody. Even, like, my mother was good at it, and she, like, that was, like, one of the few things she encouraged was my artistic talent, and I spent a lot of time in daycare practicing my art, so I got very good at it, and he was jealous of that fact, and I think that's why he tried to rip my painting up. But after that experience, I did not feel like if I stayed in the house with him that he would have let me work on painting for college. I don't think he would have liked that. I don't think he would have let me do it. I think he would have gotten in the way. Cujo, stop messing with that. It's raining outside, and that's driving my cat crazy, and so he is driving me crazy. Just so you guys know what's going on here. It's all Cujo's fault. He's distracting me. Come here, buddy. Come on, Cujo. Come on. Come get it. Come get it. Look at you. You're adorable. I can see you're gonna pounce. You're gonna pounce. Get it. Come on. After high school, I turned 18 like a month before we graduated. After high school, my aunt and uncle offered me a spot to come live with them because they were working on their basement, and once the basement was done at the end of the summer, they could shove my sister down there, and then I would have a bedroom upstairs. And I had to wait until the end of the summer. Cujo, why are you wrestling? You're so loud, buddy. Come here. Cujo. Cujo. Knowing that I had to wait until the end of the summer to go live with my aunt and uncle, I went and got a job. And I got a job working at 7-Eleven. My first day of work ever was free Slurpee day. We gave away 2,600 free Slurpees, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I actually really liked that job. My boss was great. My coworkers were great. The customers were fine. Like, I really enjoyed talking to them, most of them. There were a few guys who were jerks, and then there were some creepers creeping on an 18-year-old. But I did enjoy that job for the most part. And I could have taken that job, taken my best friend at the time who would have moved into an apartment with me, and we could have rented an apartment. She had a job too. We could have rented an apartment together, and I could have taken my scholarships and gone to that community college while working. But I chose not to do that. I chose to move across the country to go live with my aunt, my uncle, and my sister. Buddy, what are you doing? Cujo, come here. You're getting stuck in the curtains again. I fully believed at the time, and I still believe now, that the best option in that time period was for me to get away from my father and to get as far away from him as I possibly could so that he could not take it out on me. And that was a good decision. So the day I left, he started threatening me. He started threatening my aunt and uncle. He started threatening my sister. He cut my phone off, like when I was halfway to, I had like an interchange on the overlay on the flight, and he cut my phone off halfway through, and I was in some nowhere airport, and I just had to trust that my aunt and uncle knew I was still coming, and they did, like, obviously. And so I left. I left the state that I graduated from. I left my 2 scholarships. I didn't even tell anybody. I just left. And it was good for me, and I'm glad that I made that decision. After my first 2 attempts at going to college didn't work out, I tried for a 3rd time, and this was the most miserable attempt of the 3 times I tried to go to college. I did not want to apply to college for a 3rd time. I felt like the first 2 times didn't work out the way I wanted to. I didn't have a great experience with them. And at that point in time, after I moved in with my aunt and uncle, I started working. I started working at Target. It was a terrible job. It paid basically minimum wage, and there was some nasty manager who prevented me from getting a decent raise, even though all the other managers like thought I was good and deserved a better raise than that. Didn't like that job, but I still didn't want to apply to college a 3rd time, and everybody talked me into it. My aunt and uncle told me, you're such a good student, you had good grades, you could go do anything you wanted, you'd be super successful in college, you're not even gonna have to try, just go do it. And also, my sister was going to the community college out there, and she's like, come with me. There's an after-school activity today that I'm gonna stay late for. I'm gonna go back to school and stay late and go watch the speaker, who's a terrible speaker, by the way. But she said, come with me, and I'll help you apply. I'll help you do it so you don't have to do it on your own. I think my aunt and uncle talked her into saying that because she never came up with shit like that on her own. I think my aunt and uncle told her to do that. But I agreed, because we both worked at Target. I agreed after work she'd come pick me up and drive us to the school. We'd go watch her speaker together, and then I would apply to college to go there. So that's what we did. And this college, I want to say, going onto this campus was kind of like a mix between the other 2 campuses. I had my sister there, so I at least had a guide. I had somebody to guide me around. But also, I didn't have the like super excitement that with my art teacher, where the like recruiter was excited for me and all the other students were excited for me. This was just like going with my awkward sister to meet all of her like disabled friends. She just couldn't make friends with like fully healthy, normal, well-adjusted people. There was always like a major issue with any friend she had, like whether it's a disability, whether it's weird mentally, whether they were homeschooled and just socially awkward. Like, there was always something wrong with them. So it was like, I was like, fine, whatever, I'll go meet my sister's friends. I'll be nice to them. I want her to have friends. He went and saw the speaker. I don't even, oh, I do remember what he was talking about. He had gone to like some rainforest somewhere. He'd gone to like a 3rd world country and gone into the like, I want to say outback, but it wasn't Australia. He went into like the jungle or the swamp or whatever, and it was some sort of public speaker. He's trying to sell you a book or something or whatever. And he wasn't a great speaker, and also he was really giving the audience like loaded questions and stuff and trying to push a political agenda kinda, but you could tell everybody there was just kinda not interested in this guy. So whatever, we saw the speaker first, and then we went down to the office to hopefully get me into the same program my sister was in. If you've watched my other videos, you know at this point I had cut off complete contact with both of my parents individually because they were divorced and they are both mentally ill and evil. So I had no contact with my parents. So my sister was the same. So she was in this program that essentially, since she had no contact with her parents, she had like free tuition, she had free supplies. They gave her like extra money, and she was able to buy a car with that. Not a new car, like it was something we found on Craigslist, but she was able to buy a car with the extra, like, I think it was like a living amount of stipend she was given, and this was not a loan. This was free money that she did not have to pay back. And it was a great program, and since everybody was like, you do well in college, it's not gonna be hard for you, go and get in this program and get free tuition. Just take advantage of what you can while you can do it. And so I went and I tried to apply to the same program. And the bitch in the office told me I had to have my parents' tax information and that I couldn't apply without it. And I told her, I don't have my parents' tax information, and my father has not filed taxes in over 7 years. Yes, he could get in trouble with the government about it, but that's besides the point. The tax information does not exist, and I don't have access to it. So she's like, well, you have to have it, and I can't have you apply to this school without it. You have to have your parents' tax information. And so my sister was like, well, what about the program I'm in? That can't she get in that program too? And this bitch is like, she shouldn't have that program. I'm gonna take it away from her. So I was like in tears at this point, because this was like the third time I had tried, and it was so unpleasant, and this lady was so awful to me, and I was just like, I didn't even want to come here. I came because everybody said it would be easy to get into the program because my sister was already in it, and here I was up against a brick wall with this just evil lady, and she was trying to get my sister's program taken away from her. So of course my sister at this point, my sister was pretty upset because she didn't want her free tuition taken away. And ultimately, I left that college campus in tears, and I never looked back. And ultimately, my sister was able to save her tuition. She didn't get her program taken away. She was able to continue with her degree, no problem. I firmly believe that if you are kicked down enough times while trying to do something, there's a point where you need to stop getting back up and try a different option, if you have other options available to you. And I did, right? I had been working. I had a job at 7-Eleven for a few months. I had a job at Target. At that point, I want to say I'd been there almost a year. I didn't work there a full year, but it was getting close. And then I could get a different job. Like, I was 18 years old. I had great job history at this point. I was a hard worker. I didn't mind going to work at that time. Even though I didn't like working at Target, I didn't hate it yet. That was like after I didn't get my raise that I deserved, that I quit. But I had options. Like, I enjoyed working rather than going to school. I didn't really like going to school. The only thing I really liked about high school was going to art class. Like, I was a good student. I liked English class, I liked Spanish class, and I liked art classes because I had great teachers for most of those, and those are subjects I like. But I was miserable in math. I was miserable in science. And that's not completely true. I did have one good science teacher that I really liked, and I had one math teacher who was funny, but I still hated his class. But I had some other good teachers. But for the most part, school was boring for me. It was too easy for me, and I just wanted to go and work on my art projects. I didn't enjoy school. I got picked on. I got bullied. I really hated the other kids. I also just really, like, I felt like I wasn't challenged. And I felt like when I was going to work, I was a lot more challenged at work to try new things, like do things I'd never done before. And I don't know if it's challenge, but it's like opening my horizons. Like I just felt like there was more variety at work. And so I didn't like school. I really didn't want to go to college at this point. And so I just worked instead. And I put all my effort into working. You might wonder, what did I do after my 3 attempts at going to college didn't work out? So after everybody else's dreams of me going to college were dashed, what did I do? I ended up working. I was already working. I already had a job. I was working at Target, and I was part-time, but they kept asking me to fill in shifts. I had, other coworkers who were like, hey, Christine, you want this shift? And I was like, yes, I'll take it. And I got it approved every single time. I was working 40 hours a week, part-time, and at some point they did like back that off so they didn't have to pay me health benefits, but I essentially had a taste of what it was like to work full-time, and I liked it, and I liked the money that you would get working full-time versus working part-time. And when it did come time to get raises, and I realized I was sabotaged by a manager who didn't like me, and I went from making minimum wage to making $7.78 an hour, I realized it was time to look for greener pastures. So my uncle had a friend who worked for a company that was opening locations in the city we lived in, and he's like, go apply. Like, they're opening like a bunch of stores. Go apply to it, go get an interview, maybe you'll get the job. And so I applied, and that was my first job making eyeglasses. Now, I applied to make eyeglasses. I wanted to work in the lab. I'm very technical. I love working with my hands. I love making stuff. I knew I'd be good at the job. So I applied to be a technician in the lab at the company. And it's a big chain. You've heard of it before. And so I applied and I got an interview, and they didn't have any locations set up at the time. So they interviewed me in a hotel. So I went in for this interview, and I'm like, I would love to work here. Give me the job. I can sell. I can do this. I'd be good in the lab. And essentially, they didn't, maybe because I didn't have much work history, they didn't hire me for the laboratory position. They hired me not in a sales position, but in the position where you work with the doctor, you pre-test people, you take their information, you call the insurance companies, and then sometimes you have to sell if all the salesmen are busy. And I really liked that position. That was a fine position for me. It was very difficult for me to learn how to do it and learn people skills because I did not have any people skills and I was super awkward. But I did do well in the position. I did extremely well in the position, and I was very good at pre-testing, and I was very good at selling. And the doctors really, really liked me. Like, they worked well with me, and they liked having me pre-testing people for them. And it got to the point where I was so good at, explaining the products to people and making sure everybody else was taking measurements right and selling the right products that they did ultimately give me a chance to work in the laboratory. And so I was a journeyman lab tech, and they trained me. Now, when they moved me into the laboratory, I was still working part-time, and I did not have a raise. I did make more money there than I did working at Target. It was like 10% more. It was decent enough for me to take the job. And then I made commission on top of it if I sold anything. Now, since this store was new and we didn't have a lot of customers, I worked in the lab, but then I also still sold eyeglasses. I still pre-tested people. And so I would do like a back and forth kind of thing. And I was probably working way too hard for the amount of money they were paying me, but I was a very valuable employee to them. And anytime they asked me, hey Christine, do you want another shift? Do you want to go work at another store and cover a shift for someone? Do you want to stay late? Do you want to work with another customer? I can't do it all. Every single time I would stay late. Every single time I'd come in on my day off. Every single time I would work extra hours. And I was ultimately working, it was like 32 hours a week, to the point where they had to give me health insurance. And so at that point they knew I was working enough that rather than cutting my hours, they offered me a raise, they offered me a full-time position. Now I had to drive 45 minutes out of the way to get this position, but I had my own apartment at this point. It was a few months before, since I was doing well at work. I was making just under $1,000 a month. I got my own apartment because my aunt and uncle, as great as they were to let me stay with them after high school, they were charging me rent. And then when they realized that I wasn't going to go to college because my 3 attempts had just failed, they realized I was working more and that I was making more money than my sister, who was only working relatively part-time and still going to college. They decided to charge me more in rent. And given the chance to pay them $400 a month in rent, I went and looked at the cost of renting, and I saw, well, I can get an apartment for $500 a month. Why wouldn't I get my own apartment? So I got my boss to kind of fudge my salary and make it look like I was making more money than I was, and I got my own apartment. And I was super broke, and I loved it. I loved living on my own. I was probably the happiest in my life when I was living on my own, and that's nothing to say that I'm not happy with my husband or happy being married, but like financially I was in the best position of my life, even though I was super broke. It was good for me, and I really enjoyed it. So I was living on my own, given this opportunity to work full-time, given another 10% raise. I took it. I jumped on that. I said, yes, give me that full-time laboratory position working 45 minutes away. I will do it. And that went well for a bit. I did run into some problems after that point with work, but I did work at that job for 3 years. I worked there for quite a while. I was a very valuable employee to me then, and they had offered me, after I took that job, they said in 6 months, we're gonna bring you back from that like 45-minute drive, and then we're gonna give you another 10% raise. And I never received that. So I waited like a year to see, are they gonna give me that raise? Because I was moving around to different stores at this time. They had split me up. The company was laid off all the lab managers because they were going to be selling the company, and so they were spreading me really thin working at the different stores. And so there was like a period of time I just kind of like waited it out, and then I started talking to the different managers, and I said, hey, I was told I would get a raise. Can I get that raise? Like, hey, I need more money. Like, my car keeps breaking down. I need to buy a new car. I need more money. I can't just be broke all the time. I am struggling financially with this job. And they kept giving me, oh, we'll talk to the territory director. Oh, I'll talk to them. And then I got to a point where they said, well, we're on a hiring freeze. We're told that we can't give anybody raises. And so I told the lab manager who had trained me and was now laid off with the company, he came back as a general manager, and he liked me, I liked him, we got along well. And I said, hey, can you get me a job at the eyeglass manufacturing facility in the area that all the lab managers had worked at. I was the only lab tech who had not worked at this manufacturing facility. And he's like, you're going to be working overtime, but yes, I can get you a job there if you want. And so I said, do it. I will work overtime. Give me that job. And so I started working at that job. At first it was great. I enjoyed it at first. Like, I did one thing every single day and my hands were dying. Like, I was in a lot of pain from it. But I was working, 40 hours a week. Sometimes they do mandatory 10-hour shifts. Sometimes it'd be mandatory 12 hours a shift. You had to work like one Saturday a month. And then that job had a lot of problems. And ultimately, the guy on the night shift quit. And after the guy on the night shift quit, I was in kind of a bad mental state. And I started working his job too. I started working 10, 12-hour shifts every single night. And then, I actually started working 12-hour shifts, like once I got into it. 12-hour shifts every single night. And then if I had to work that Saturday, I would go home, stay up all night, or I would go out with my friends to stay up all night and be off. I'd be off work at 11 o'clock at night, and then I'd be back there at 6 o'clock the next morning. So no sleep, I would go and work. Or if I didn't have to work that Saturday morning, I would work my 2 to 11 shift, and then I would work until 6 a.m. when the first shift girl came back in for her Saturday morning shift. And I was working over 60 hours a week. I even had one week where I hit 73 hours, and I have to tell you, there is a brick wall that you hit at about 70 hours of work where you are not productive. Like, you can't do anything after about 70 hours of work. Your body starts shutting down. So I kept doing it, but I backed it off down to like 60 hours a week. And it was really good for my finances. And I, at that point, was like, I could get a house. Like, this is before COVID. I thought I could get a house, and I just started socking away money. I started saving up money. I bought a new car. It was a $10,000 car. I talked them down to $9,600 with my trade-in. I'm a good negotiator, but I bought a new car. Mind you, the other one had broken down on me several times at this point. I was able to pay for surgery for my wisdom teeth. I was able to buy a new winter coat. Like, I was good. And I started socking away money to go get a down payment on a house. And then I ultimately had to quit that job because it was a terrible job, and they changed my job function that, like, triggered the whiplash injury I had, and it like locked up my shoulder and my neck and caused like severe burning in my arm. And I had to sue them for workman's comp, and that took like 2 years to get a settlement, and that was a pain, whatever. I haven't had good jobs. I've always ended a job because something terrible happened, but ultimately I was already living on my own. I had a taste of full-time work. I had a taste of overtime, and I already didn't like college. So after that job, I thought, I'm gonna go get a different one. I ended up running into an old coworker from the first eyeglass job I worked at, and she said, hey, I'm working with this other girl we used to work with. We need another employee, come here. And I just jumped on it. And so I kind of got into this cycle of work hard, work as much as you can, make money, support yourself, live on your own. Maybe it's not a good job, maybe you don't enjoy it, but after working someplace for a year to 3 years, you can go get a different job. And I just realized that I had $10,000 in the bank. And obviously that's gone now because of COVID and health issues and all that. But I had $10,000 in the bank. And everyone was talking to me like, why are you gonna go get a house on your own? Why are you saving up to buy your own house? You could go to college, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you should be a doctor. If I had a nickel for any time someone told me I should be a doctor because I worked with these doctors, and I never had a single doctor tell me I should be a doctor, mind you, it was only customers. And I'd smile. Just tell me, yeah, I could. Okay, I could do that. I didn't want to. I wanted to be on my own. I liked being on my own and supporting myself. I liked being independent. And I just decided, why would I go to college? Why would I spend money to go to college when I could just be saving the money to buy a house? Isn't the point of going to college to get a job where you make enough money so that you can financially support yourself and whatever children you have? And I was like, I'm already working. I'm already financially solvent. Like, I'm already saving money. I'm gonna buy my house, and then I'm just gonna bypass college altogether. And if I didn't have the health issues, if I hadn't had to quit work, I would be like super wealthy right now. I would have a ton of money. It'd be great. But that ultimately didn't happen. But I also think about, I had those health issues, and they did get worse from working, from the stress of work. But also they would have got worse if I was working from a college job and had the stress of working a job that I got with a college degree. Because by then I would have graduated, obviously. And I think about, like, if I had gone to college, I had spent the money to go to college rather than saving the money, I would have still had all those health issues I ended up having. And then I would have been working a job that I probably wouldn't have liked. I probably would not like any job because I don't really enjoy working. I just enjoy getting paid for my efforts. And it did take a few jobs to realize that I don't like work itself. And I do currently have a part-time job. I have a great boss. It's a good job. I don't like working that job. And it's got nothing to do with the job itself. It's that after taking time off to deal with my health issues, I really didn't like going back to work. And so it's just one of those things that, like, I think about, what if I had gone to college and got student loans and then worked a job for the student loans, had to pay off these student loans, had even more debt than we have right now because I would have had to have the debt to go to college in the first place, and I wouldn't have worked as much to save up money to fend off some of that debt. Like, it really wouldn't have been a good situation for me. Like, I think I would have been a lot worse off now if I had gone to college. So I have absolutely no regrets that I didn't go to college. Do I regret some of the places I worked at? Maybe after a certain point I probably should have jumped ship sooner. But I don't have any regrets that I did work. I don't have any regrets that I worked 60 hours a week to try and save money, because it put me in a very good financial situation, and it helped me learn a lot about myself. It helped me learn a lot about the world. It helped me learn my limits. Like, I learned my limits. 70 hours a week is too much for me. But I learned a lot more just from getting out, going into the world, than I would have ever learned in school, because I didn't really learn that much in high school. And I know I wouldn't have learned that much in college either. And if the whole point of college is to prepare you to work, Well, I already had that down. I already worked. I already figured that out. I already had a good enough work history by the time I would have graduated college to get whatever job I applied for. Because I've never been rejected for a job that I interviewed for. Any job I got an interview for, I was hired for. I didn't have a hard time getting a job. And so I really feel like this expectation everybody else gave me to go to college kind of skewed the goal that I should have had for myself, because I was a hard worker. I ended up working. I ended up supporting myself. I lived on my own at 20 years old, and I never looked back. And I had friends who were in college after that were like wasting their lives, and they were terrible workers. And it just, I don't get, like, there's definitely a disconnect between college and work, and going to college to prepare you for the workforce, but actually being engaged in the workforce and being prepared for it. And I feel like, having not gone to college, I was much more prepared for the workforce than my peers were. And I really hate saying my peers, because I don't view other people my age as my peers, but that's the terminology for it. So there you have it. That's why I never went to college, and why even after not enjoying working, even after my health issues, why I will never go back to college to get a college degree, even though I'm a fantastic student, even though I could get scholarships, and even though I had scholarships and could have gone to college for free. If you guys are still here, thank you so much for watching my video today. I will see you guys next time. So make sure you're subscribed to my channel so we can see each other again. And maybe leave a like or comment on this video if you got something to say.